Now moving into the front row, I absolutely love the look of this, love the styling of it. The headrest is super comfortable there, adjustable on multiple levels all at the same time. And then, okay, so it's on the inside in order to be able to lower it down again. So really nice. We can't pull it forward, so it is locked into place there, but we can at least move it up and down to our liking. Now, quite a lot of stuff to point out here. And firstly, I've got to say, I love the digital dash inside of this thing. So we've got a digital cluster screen, beautiful multimedia screen here as well. But a couple things to point out. This is just going to be a quick walk around of the interior of the vehicle. If you're looking for a fuller look at the vehicle, specifically on how maybe all of these buttons work on the steering wheel and how to navigate the cluster screen, or how to use the media screen itself, so setting up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, using navigation, things like that, check down in the description below because I have put together a video specifically on how each of these systems work. So you don't have to kind of drag through things if you don't necessarily want to, but let's at least go through some of the basics. So on the steering wheel itself, our stick on the left-hand side is going to let us figure out what's going on with our running lamps. We can also flash our high beams, lock them out if we need to. Along the right side, that lets us figure out exactly what's going on with our windshield wipers, so pretty straightforward there. And we've also got paddle shifters inside this thing, so nice, and I am so excited to be trying that out. Because if we kind of look at that in conjunction with our shifter, yeah, we've got our traditional park, reverse, neutral, drive modes, but we've also got a manual mode. So if we are in our drive mode, we just slap the stick over to the side, and we can literally adjust what gear we're in as we go. So definitely a nice touch that we've got that option. Now, a few things to point out. We've got a series of different buttons on the left-hand side, typical of what we'd see in Hyundai vehicles. We've got our voice command prompt, so we can do things like change radio stations, we can navigate using our voice, make phone calls, things like that. If we were hooked up through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, like on the Apple side of things, we could use it as our Siri Assistant button as well. We've got a few different mode buttons and star button, which means that we can literally create a customized button, more or less can do anything we'd like it to. Answer or hang up on a phone call, and our basic for volume control. This thing also does have the Smart Cruise system. So the Smart Cruise is essentially a set it and forget it cruise control. Like let's say if you set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, if the car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. There's a lane centering system in there as well, which literally is going to keep you in your lane as you go, as long as it recognizes the lane markings. Adjusting the steering wheel itself is a manual process inside of the vehicle lineup across every trim level, and it's a telescopic wheel as well, which is definitely a nice thing. All right, so we do have factory navigation inside this vehicle, which is great, but if you have a tendency to maybe use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze, you can hook up through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in order to be able to use one of your phone maps instead. So you've got a little bit of flexibility there. So again, really nice look there. If you're again looking for, again, more of a little bit of an in-depth walk around, look down below for that video instead. But we've got a nice touch button along the top there, adjust our volume, and it is kind of neat what they've decided to do with the actual display here. It looks really sharp. We've got a really nice setup for our climate control settings, and one of the nice things, dual zone climate control. So if somebody's going to kind of argue with you over what the temperature should be, you can at least adjust it one way or the other if you wanted to. We've got our sync button, which is going to default it back to the driver's side. We've got our basic for our diffuser, as well as our rear defroster, which is definitely a nice thing. Now moving down a tiny little bit, we've got a few USB power points. One of them is to actually use devices through USB. The other one is actually just for charging purposes. We've got a 12-volt power point there, so a traditional cigarette lighter adapter would work there. And there also is a wireless charging pad, so always a nice thing to have that pad. And then there is a little indicator light letting us know when we've got a phone on that charge pad. Moving down a tiny little bit more, we've got a few cup holders there. And then with the shifter, so as I mentioned, we've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, so our standard, and then it also does have a manual mode by flipping the gear shifter over to the side once you're in drive. But the actual styling and the aesthetics of the actual shifter is really nice. Like grips comfortably along the hand there as well, always a nice thing. Now down below that a tiny little bit more, we've got another little switch that's going to let us switch between either our drive or our terrain modes. So our drive modes, typical inside of Hyundai styling, we've got our normal, sport, and then our smart mode, which does something unique to the actual cluster screen itself. Like I love the way that what they've done with the sport mode, just the look of it, like it is absolutely beautiful. There are a few different other options because when we get into the other side, we've got our terrain mode. So we've got things like our snow, mud, and a sand mode as well. And each mode for all of these is going to do something different. Looking off to the side there as well, we also do have our downhill brake control. There's the auto hold setting, which I always talk about the auto hold setting because I love it so much. But what that means is if you come to a complete stop and you're in drive, you take your foot off the brake, car's going to hold in place. We also do have our 360 camera button, and that is one of the beautiful things about this trim level of the vehicle. We've got our front-facing camera, side view mirror cams, as well as a camera in the back there, and we can switch between the view that we want, which is kind of neat. Like, we've got a bed view for the vehicle, we've got our rear view camera, and then there's kind of like a split view so we can see what's going on beside us as well. So really, really nice that we've got that flexibility. We can push that to get rid of it again. Electronic parking brake inside of the vehicle, and then, as I mentioned, heated and ventilated front seats. As I see a B there, I'm like, B! So we've got heated and ventilated front seats inside of this trim level of the vehicle as well, and there also is a heated steering wheel. Now, we do have a little button there for our armrest, and opening that up, we've got a tiny little bit of storage space, and that's about it. So there are no extra power points or anything like that inside of this. Now, as we start to move up overhead, we do have an auto-dimming rear view mirror, and then there are, so we've got our home link buttons up there as well, so if you've got a garage door opener at home, we can easily program in the codes if we need to. We can call a tow, we've got our SOS, and then we can control our cabin lights on there as well. And then, because this thing's got a sunroof, we can, so we can't, oh yeah, we can! Oh, that's so cool! Oh, that's so cool. I was in the Kona the other day, I didn't even realize it could do that. So you can vent this thing out. Literally, all you're gonna do is just push the button up and it can vent it out, and we can just close that down, or we can literally slide the whole roof open there as well. So, let there be light. And we can easily close it up. So one button press, open, close there, which is definitely a nice thing. And the actual shade itself is manual. Right now, taking a peek at second row spacing, I am actually kind of surprised at how much space is back here. Like, I'm 6 feet tall, driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall, and I've got a nice amount of knee space, good amount of foot space, and up overhead, so nice. I've got like almost 3.5 inches of head space. So definitely nice to know that people that are sitting in the back here are going to have more than enough space for their head. Now, there are quite a few things in the back here, definitely a nice thing. So we do have some cup holders along both of the side doors. We've got our basics, so we've got our window up and down. We've got a couple handles there and a hook along both sides. Now, other thing to point out, right along the very top, we've got our cabin lighting, so we can control that from the back here. In behind both the driver passenger first row seats, we've got a few cargo nets, so we can store a few extra things. And then we've got a few power points. So we've got 2 USB ports just right along the very bottom, which means we can power some things up fairly easily. Now, moving back a tiny bit more, we do have a manual sliding rear window. So definitely a nice touch there, so we can kind of create some cross breeze if we'd like to. If you've got kids in car seats, rear facing shouldn't be an issue here because we've got a few latches there, and then we've also got the top tether along the seats there as well. So you've got a front facing, rear facing child seat. You shouldn't have an issue getting the child seat back here. And just depending on how tall people in the front seats are, but like I said, shouldn't be an issue if you just adjust the seats as necessary. But overall, I'd say I'm fairly impressed with the styling of this. Now, there are a couple of neat things about these seats. So we do have a few latches right along both side seats, so we can pull this up, and we've got a little bit of storage space underneath my seat, and underneath this other seat we've got our jack there as well. So really, really nice to know that if we need a little bit of extra storage space, we've got it, because one of the cool things, we technically could pull this whole jack stand out if we wanted to, and we've got even more storage space underneath the seat. So I, again, love the look of this. I love what Hyundai's done with it. They've given us a nice amount of storage space, and there's great styling as well. And one of the cool things is that these seats do lock up into place as well. So if you've got both seats up, you can store bigger boxes and things like that back here, no problem, without having to worry about the seat kind of moving forward on you by itself.